Hello, this is Patricia Brooks, and this is Courage Concept number 57. Sometimes the answer is simpler than we make it. A few days ago, I was on my morning walk, and I was about 3/4 of the way into my walk in a wooded area when all of a sudden, in the bottom of my foot, I felt pain every time I put pressure on my foot. And I didn't know what was going on. I thought, uh-oh, I've got a pebble in my shoe. It was in the middle of a foresty area, so I didn't really have a place to stop and take my shoe off and shake the pebble out. So about 5 minutes later, I got to the roadway where I immediately took my shoe off because I was experiencing some pain. And I took my shoe off and I shook it out and nothing came out of it. So I put my hand inside and I felt this protrusion in the inner sole of my shoe. And I thought, well, that's interesting. It feels like my shoe is disformed or malformed. And I thought immediately, I'm going to have to take this to a shoe repair place for them to fix this. Or worse, I'm going to have to buy a whole new pair of sneakers. And these sneakers weren't that old. And so I was a little bit discouraged, disheartened, but I put my shoe back on and I continued on my walk because I had to get home. Well, anyway, I continued for another minute or two, but the pain started to become unbearable. And I thought to myself, well, this feels like what a tire might be experiencing once it's run over a nail. And so I stopped and I turned my foot over to look at the sole of my shoe. And there, lodged into the rubber, was a rock. And I thought, well, maybe this rock is just pushing up into my foot and it's causing this pain to be really bad. And so I rubbed my foot across the asphalt and immediately that rock dislodged. And then I started to walk again, gently, because I didn't want to experience the pain. But the pain had subsided. I felt a little bit of tenderness from walking on it before, but it had subsided. And I thought, oh, Patricia, you thought you were going to have to buy a whole new pair of shoes when all you needed to do was dislodge this rock. And I continued on my walk and I went about my business. Problem solved. Sometimes the answer is simpler than we make it. This concept goes to the catalyst for cultivating courage, that is shifting your perspective. Oftentimes we will jump to a conclusion that we've got a problem and we think, oh, it's immediately the worst case scenario. My shoe is defective and I'm going to have to buy a whole new pair of sneakers. Or my shoe is defective and I'm going to have to take it to a shoe repair place, pay to get it fixed, and I'm going to be without my shoes for a couple of days. But the solution was much simpler than that. The problem was not as severe as I originally thought. Now, we can often tend to look at the worst case scenario because we may have a tendency to look at the glass as half empty. And when we do, that kind of quashes our creativity. It quashes our desire to try new things, to be a little bit daring, to have more courage. But I challenge you to look for simpler solutions. Don't just necessarily go with the first thing that comes to mind when you face a problem as what the problem is and therefore what the solution will be. And to do this, it's quite simple. You ask yourself, once you come up with what the problem is and what the potential solution might be, ask yourself, okay, what else might the problem be here? And you might want to write that down and then ask yourself that same question again. What else might be the problem here? And do this 5 or 6 or 7 times until you've exhausted all the problems that could be behind what you're experiencing. And then you can go back and look at the list of problems, kind of analyze what's going on and see, in fact, what is the problem and what the potential solution might be. You might find out that the solution is simpler than you make it. Now, this is part 1 of this courage concept. There'll be a second courage concept associated with this experience, but I'm going to leave that until next week because I learned something new the day after I dislodged this rock and solved or seemingly solved my problem. Sometimes the answer is simpler than we make it. I will see you again next time. Bye for now.